Hi everyone, welcome back to the Minecraft world. Today we'll actually be doing some projects instead of lollygagging. Today we're going to be clearing a path from the most southern trail ruin to the village close by. So we can actually start, working on this whole area, getting some roads set up. So we're just going to clear some trees, basic stuff. Otherwise, I've made some pretty decent plans for the world in terms of history, lore, everything like that, which I would like to mention that potentially Thursday this week or sometime next week, I'm going to get a video out on that that will kind of go a lot more in depth in how you can add lore to your world, kind of documenting my process and how I've done it. It goes a little more than just looking at Minecraft specific stuff, but maybe you'll give it a chance if you're looking to give some more world building to your Minecraft world. But otherwise, I wanted to spend today talking about imaginary friends. And there's a really specific reason why I wanted to bring this topic up, and it's mainly because if you're familiar at all with the explosion in AI friends, which seemed to be odd to me, because basically you're just giving your information to companies. This isn't your Akinator of the past or even Cleverbot who you could actually talk to. These are literally chatbots that you can construct all you want, and basically, I mean, like I said, you're basically just giving your information to companies. That's basically what every uh, chat with AI is, more or less. Like, if you are very specific with how you want things crafted, then you will probably get good results, but you'll also probably be giving a lot of your information away, so that's probably not the best. So what you can do instead is go back to the original, which is actual imaginary friends. And maybe you had them when you were younger, and maybe you didn't. Or, maybe you're like me and you still have them. And I wanted to talk about two in particular today. So, that's the first imaginary friend I ever had, which was when I was like, oh geez, probably like 6 or 7. And my current one, who, if you look at my channel art, might be obvious, is a werewolf named Frizzy. But I wanted to go a little more in depth. You know, if you are familiar maybe with the show Bakugan when it originally aired all the way. I don't know if it aired in. I don't know what its original air date was, but I can tell you it was the original series because I have not watched it since. I don't even think I really watched it that much anyway. But my dragon Drago was based on, well, of course, Drago from Bakugan, and I guess um maybe let's take a pause and just take a step back and say that honestly really hate the term imaginary friend, because if you're maybe familiar with imaginary in terms of like mathematics, which maybe you're not, so let's just talk about that momentarily. Imaginary numbers in math are basically the byproduct of our number system. If you're familiar, if you take the square root of a number, you'll get like if you take the square root of 4, you'll get 2 because 2 by 2 is 4. But what happens if you try to take the square root of a negative number? Well, that's kind of a problem. And that's where imaginary numbers come in. But we also sometimes, don't like to use that term because imaginary kind of has the connotation that maybe it's not useful or it's kind of, like just a concept. But imaginary numbers are useful. That's why we like to call them complex numbers. But I want to bring that up because honestly, I hate the term imaginary friends. I mean, I don't know that there's a better term, but I just wanted to get that out there. But anyway, going back to Drago, I mean, I guess I don't really know what appealed to me the most about starting with a dragon. Probably the first reason is that, I mean, who doesn't like dragons? That's probably the first start. And basically their similarities really end at like I guess in the like very few episodes of Bakugan that I watched, I kind of think the only thing I pulled away was that like Drago was like a strong, powerful ally who kind of like stands behind you basically all the time. It's kind of like a guiding figure. Like that's kind of awesome. But I also thought to myself when I was younger, like, man, if I had a dragon, no one would mess with me. And I think that would probably still hold true regardless of age. But um, there's similarities end there because honestly, I kind of made my own world with that, which I think leads into why I'm like world building a lot, but um, I eventually made that world more interesting. You know, Drago being, in my case, a dragon prince, which is, that's kind of cool. But he's reluctantly a dragon prince who'd much rather spend his time, out at night, skirting royal duties, and maybe being more into dragon brawling, which in my case wouldn't be like anything, too, it would just be like, I guess if it's like, let's say you like Pokemon battles, you just faint. It's not nothing too intense, but I mean, I think over the years, I've probably had like at least over 50 imaginary friends, and that's kind of a lot to manage. So we got to boil that down over time. And so I've finally settled at just one, which is my werewolf Frizbite. I would say he's kind of like, he's basically like an amalgamation of all the ones that have come before him. And I guess I want to make the point, like I guess I kind of like imaginary friends because they've been my genuine support system over these years, and I think they kind of do work as well as like a really good like internal motivator. Like um, if you can separate the pressure on yourself from yourself, if that makes sense, then I think it can help just a little bit. If you have, like you, someone who's always aware of your actions is the only person who is aware of all of your actions is you. So if you could have, another face to project that to, then I think it can work well for you. It's worked for me. I think that's why I've gotten this far, but otherwise, I think imaginary friends are really good. And honestly, probably the next best part about them is I don't know how anyone else ever interacted. I think when I was younger too, I also had I had a bunch of stuffed animals too. I think everyone probably has an insane amount of stuffed animals. I know when I was younger, my grandfather would take us to, I think at the mall there was the Hallmark store, and there was always a ton of Webkins there, and those Webkins, I mean, they made it pretty easy to that and the Build a Bear store too. Making your own Build a Bear made it really easy to have a physical form to those imaginary friends. So for example, I've always been a fan of wolves, and I think at least a couple of stuffed animals that I have had are wolves, or I know the one I had from Build a Bear was like a husky, and then it had like a little husky pup, but I lost that one quite a few years ago, unfortunately. But I do still have one of my Webkins that my grandpa got me. I got a couple of those actually, but mm, definitely a lesser amount. Random side note also, does anyone remember Webkins? Maybe the game more. I know it got recently maybe a graphical upgrade, but you can still play the classic edition. But honestly, not a game that I've thought of in quite some time. I know that need a you don't actually need a proper account to, or say you don't need a you don't need a stuffed animal if you actually want to just play the game. You can just play with a free account. I'm pretty certain of that. Um, I feel like that game was kind of adjacent to Club Penguin, but I mean, maybe not maybe not so much. I think I played Club Penguin quite a lot more, but basically, extending into that, those stuffed animals, I mean, they were really good to project imaginary friends to. Wolves, I think I had probably a bear I named Buddy, I think, probably inspired by one of the cats we had at the time, whose name was also Buddy. And, I mean, stuffed animals, they worked. They worked really well. I also had horse stuffed. If I went off and listed all of them, I think we'd be here for a while. So let's just say, stuffed animals worked for me really well. But really, what worked for me is if I don't know if anyone else does this, but so let's just you know for me, when I want to talk to my imaginary friends, I just use my blanket, honestly. So I won't not be ashamed to admit that I'm like, yeah, still cuddling with my blanket. I don't care. Hasn't done any harm. Has gotten me this far. So I guess I'd be saying here, um, you guys remember your imaginary friends when you were younger? Do you still have them even? I'm sure for a lot of people, the answer is probably I don't remember them if I even had any. And there's at least come in a couple of movies, maybe in recent years, about imaginary friends. I haven't watched any of them because I don't think they probably wouldn't particularly interest me, even though that would be funny considering the topic of this video. But I think for the most part, I want to wrap up this video by saying, whatever support system works for you, you should keep that. You should keep that going. If it doesn't cause you any harm, if it works well for you, don't feel like you have to stop doing that because you feel like you need to. There was at least one time I did see a therapist at one point for, I guess I wanted to get rid of my imaginary friends because I thought, like, kind of weird to be at my certain age and still have them. But I think through interacting with that therapist, I realized that I actually didn't want to get rid of them because they work for me, and I don't have to live to other bizarre expectations or other people's standards. You don't have to do that if stuff works for you. And like I said, I would honestly wager that the reason why I love world building so much, especially in Minecraft and other games too, um, is because of my imaginary friends, probably because I've always had to world build in that direction. So in some sense, I think it's always worked for me because it's made me more creative. I've really been able to express ideas for, like I said, just world building in this Minecraft world. We'll get into that when that video comes out. The specifics of how I built this world, but I think I could probably give you a sneak peek. There is a lot of side note. So wrapping up that point, keep your support systems going. Back to the Minecraft world. I did want to wrap up by saying the whole point of this is that we do want to actually fix up all of these villages and connect them together. So the point is, we're going to, turn this Woodborough is this village. We're going to turn it into the primo capital of this southern region and, connect it with a trail ruin. But of course, I did want to mention, because I did think it was worth mentioning and it was interesting, that while I was partially excavating that trail ruin, I actually realized that it was generated before I did the world conversion, which means that all of the whatever gravel it's called, the gravel that has pottery sherds and other loot in it, is actually generated so that when you polish it, it doesn't give you literally anything. So I'm actually convinced that we maybe shouldn't excavate the trail ruin. We should actually just maybe leave it as like a partially excavated trail ruin, because I actually do across the world have 3 other excavated trail ruins, so there's no real point in going much further with that. But other than that, that's pretty much a wrap for today's video. We're going to keep working on the rest of the world, particularly the southern region, and yeah, I hope you have a wonderful day and keep playing Minecraft and keep doing what works for you.